So thank you, and Dr. Dexter Gordon, thank you so much for coming. He was ill, and he still made the trip, so thank you very much.
I've not been out in the streets with all the demonstrations because I've been on my back ill. That's the only reason that I have not been out with every effort to bring attention to this injustice in our nation. I want to make some remarks, and then I want to read some of what I've written here. Maybe I should read first, because the remarks I want to make are about my life in Tacoma. You've read a short version of the statement from the Race and Pedagogy Institute at the University of Puget Sound on the killing of Michael Brown and the lack of indictment by the grand jury. I'll just read a couple pages and then make some comments. The Race and Pedagogy Institute notes with deep sadness, first the killing of Michael Brown, and then the decision of the grand jury not to indict Officer Darren Wilson for this act. While we respect the grand jury, we are outraged at the manipulation of the process by St. Louis County Prosecutor Robert McCullough to bring about this predictable result of no indictment. Prosecutor McCullough acted in the name of justice, but the scales were clearly tipped in favor of Officer Wilson. Prosecutor McCullough, who faced calls to recuse himself on account of his documented bias in favor of police officers, as well as his personal history that cast doubt on his ability to be fair in this case, not only refused to recuse himself, but by his action in the proceedings, he forever cast doubt on the fairness of the process. In order for us to continue in good faith to encourage respect for the decisions made by our courts, we must insist that they and our entire criminal justice system work in concert to ensure equal justice under law for all. African Americans continue to believe that the criminal justice system was not designed to serve and protect them. Sadly, this perspective finds its basis in the historical practice of the unequal dispensing of justice across the nation. Such findings were reported by the Kerner Commission in 1968. And they are supported by the several reports by the Sentencing Project and studies like Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, Douglas Blackman's Slavery by Another Name, and David Wilson's Inventing Black-on-Black Violence. Of course, the developments in Ferguson since August 9, 2014, with the shooting and subsequent treatment of Michael Brown and those who call for justice in his name, only serve to confirm the continued existence of this problem. The killing of young black men by law enforcement officers in this country must stop. It is an outrage to note the number of young black men killed by the police in the last 4 months of 2014 alone. Since the killing of Mike Brown, Tamir Rice, Tanisha Anderson, Akai Gurley, Ezell Ford, and Omar Abrego have been added to this macabre list. Young black men killed by the police. We are in agreement with other agencies, including the Yale Black Law Students Association, that both state and federal laws on use of force by police officials almost ensures continued legally sanctioned slaughter. We therefore support the call for a review of state and local procedures for subduing alleged assailants, and that force equivalent to the threat should be employed against unarmed suspects. We also affirm the priority of the safety of police officers. Additionally, we must reduce justifiable homicide by raising the justification standard above that of police feeling threatened. We strongly believe that justice is the basis upon which a society must seek peace and equality. So, for those people who are calling for peace, I say to you, you cannot in good faith call for peace without a foundation of justice. We must denounce the tainted method applied in the Michael Brown case, as it ensures that we will never get to the truth. In so doing, we stand with the National Bar Association, the ACLU of Missouri, the Yale Black Law Students Association, and other organizations voicing similar concerns. Racism has no place in our legal system, and we have a duty to ensure that it is eliminated from every facet of our system and our society. Tacoma has its own history of challenging race relations and strained relationships between law enforcement and the community. We therefore recommend that, like the rest of the nation, Tacoma must take note of the lessons from Ferguson. And the way I think of Tacoma is, I think Mike Brown did not dodge a bullet, but every time Tacoma thinks of Ferguson, Tacoma should say, Tacoma has dodged a bullet. Tacoma's criminal justice establishment, including the bench, the district attorney's office, and the police, should take note that representation matters. Therefore, a criminal justice establishment that does not look anything like the community it serves is asking for trouble, no matter how dedicated and professional its employees. And I've heard that from the DA's office again and again when we raise this question. Based on documented best practices elsewhere, we recommend that the Tacoma Police Department be guided by some of the following. And I simply pulled this from the case of Richmond, California, that has all but eliminated police killing of its citizens. 1, reward officers for connecting with the community. Promote senior officers who treat all communities with respect, including communities of color. Officers' job evaluations should be tied to their success in community engagement. Patrol officers should be given more regular beats and directed to spend more time on foot rather than in squad cars. Assign officers for longer periods to specific geographical areas with the expectation that they get to know and become known by residents. Departments should be engaged with businesses, nonprofits, churches, and a wide variety of community organizations. And they should come to be seen as partners in crime reduction. Number 2, hire for diversity. Make it a top priority to hire and promote the highest quality people that represent diversity of the community and diversity across the board, including more women, Asians, Latinos, African Americans. Also, hire for diversity in life experiences. Being connected to neighborhoods, growing up either in Tacoma or cities like Tacoma. While it can be meaningful for officers to have had military experience, it's also important to hire people who can show empathy with victims of crime, who are not afraid to smile, to get out of the police car, to interact in a positive way with people, who can demonstrate emotional intelligence, who are good listeners, who have patience, who don't feel like it takes away from their authority to demonstrate kindness. Not only should we stop the militarization of our police with equipment, but we should stop hiring almost exclusively from the military to make up our civilian police organizations. Number 3, partner with activists and community groups. For too long, police organizations seem to operate with the notion that activists and community groups are the enemy. We are not. Work closely with groups across the city to connect with a network of street-smart youth mentors to identify teenagers most at risk of joining gangs or engaging in gun violence. Design opportunities for job training, counseling, financial support for young people who agree to abandon a life of crime. Work with community organizations to ensure fair treatment for all. And I want to commend some of the police officers in Tacoma who I see regularly in places like the Black Collective. But I have one caution about that. The engagement of the Tacoma police with the Black Collective, for example, is often about reporting. X has happened, Y has happened. I am yet to see any of the recommendations coming from the community enacted among our police. So, for example, with the shooting of young black men in our community in Seattle and across the nation, I personally have raised the question, what about retraining of our police officers so that they are not on the streets to kill our young black men, but they're on there to keep the peace? So, undertake new training programs and acquire non-lethal weaponry, including tasers and pepper spray, designed to minimize the use of deadly force. The gun cannot be our first choice to solve every problem on the streets of our cities. Participate in the nationwide Violence Reduction Network, and this is sponsored by the United States Department of Justice, and it promotes efforts to ensure that there's procedural justice, including focusing on the problem of unconscious bias in police interactions with the public. And now my off-the-cuff remarks. I want to just illustrate something here about holding teenagers responsible. Many of us know the name Ray Allen. He used to play basketball here in this region. Well, in August, I think 3 weeks after Michael Brown, 3 young men were arrested in Florida. Why? They broke into Ray Allen's house. And Ray Allen wasn't there, his wife was there. She woke up and saw these 3 young men in her house, screamed for the police came and accosted the 3 young men, and guess what happened to the 3 young men? Absolutely nothing. Because these 3 young men apparently at a party found out, oh, this is Ray Allen's house. It would be cool to see what the inside of it looks like. In the middle of the night, they enter this house, but these 3 young white men were held by the police and handed over to their parents. So, when we talk about holding accountable. That's what sensible police officers do. They don't kill young people for stupid action on the street. You find ways to de-escalate. So, Michael Brown, almost the same height as the police officer. The police officer, a professional, trained in these kinds of issues. It's on the police officer to de-escalate the situation. So all those people who are asking for Michael Brown to be held responsible, you've already got the answer. It's a macabre way to hold somebody responsible for bad behavior by shooting them. I came to Tacoma 12 years ago. And this is the part where I'm going to obey my wife and be short. One of the observations I've made is when I was asked to join the American Leadership Forum in 2007, I looked across our city and every person on the city council was white. Every person on the county council was white. Every person on the school board was white. I made one observation several years ago, and I think this white community has never forgiven me for making that observation. 83% of the teachers in Tacoma School District are white. 54% of the students are students of color. It's just a fact. And for that observation, which I made in a letter to the Tacoma News Tribune, a white person called the President of the United States, the President of the University of Puget Sound, where I work. For all I know, they call the President as well. Called the President of the University of Puget Sound and threatened to cease engagement with any university who would employ someone who would make an observation like that. The observation that this is the structure of our community. Tacoma, we have structured inequality. Our entire school board is still white. And all my friends in this community cannot say black people have not stepped forward. Cannot say black people have not offered to be part of the solution. So my short word is there are efforts in this community to make our community a community that represents all of us. I encourage you to go beyond the talk. I am part of an organization called The Conversation. 8 years. We've met every week, multiracial group, to address these questions. 8 years now in Tacoma. I lead the Race and Pedagogy Institute on the campus of the University of Puget Sound. Leads the nation in challenging educators everywhere to look at the issue of race as a significant feature of American life. America, Tacoma, we will not continue to dodge a bullet. Ferguson, Richard Rothstein, one of my favorite policy analysts, says, Ferguson was built on U.S. urban policies. Tacoma has been built on historical policies of injustice. We've got to correct them. Let's not wait for the next bullet. Thank you.